So piggybacking off of my original reporting on Tuesday about basically there being a pitched Bloodborne game that was turned down by either Sony or FromSoft has now been kind of corroborated by Jason Schreier over on Bloomberg, and I'm about to get into it because this not only confirms a lot of things that I had talked about previously, but also kind of adds more light to things that were kind of hinted at in that original report, specifically the fact that, well, FromSoft was the one who basically canceled the the Bloodborne remake. They were the ones that it appears that Sony went to them to basically not want to ruffle any feathers over there, and we're like, hey, are you guys going to be cool with this? And FromSoft was like, yeah, no, we don't want this. But here, I'm going to bring up the article, and I'm going to talk about specifically the Bloodborne side of this. So, talking about Bloodborne, in a quote in the article, there was one idea that seemed perfect: Bloodborne, a gothic action game released in 2015 for the PlayStation 4, developed by FromSoftware. Bloodborne is widely considered to be one of the greatest games ever made. I agree, but its original release suffered from frame rate drops, true, and other technical issues, making it the natural fit for the BluePoint treatment. Fans had been dreaming of a Bloodborne remake for years, and the idea had been strongly considered and at one point was even expected within BluePoint, but never entered production. In early 2025, when BluePoint again pitched the idea of a Bloodborne remake, the studio was told that the numbers made sense, which is very interesting, but FromSoftware didn't want it to happen, according to people familiar with the process. There's so much to get into here, which, number one, the whole idea that for the past at least probably 5 years since the Demon Souls remake, people have been asking for a Bloodborne remake, which never made sense to me. I don't know why you wouldn't just want them to remaster it, similar to a Dark Souls 1, a Dark Souls 2. Like, you don't have anyone out here asking for a Dark Souls 3 remake, even though, in my opinion, that game is comparable graphically to Bloodborne, apart from its resolution and frame rate. So, the fact that for all these years, people have been, like, pointing the finger at Sony, saying, hey, why haven't you done anything with this property? And to be fair, they have, just not with the game. Even now, we're getting merchandise released for this game. We've had the comic books. Like, all of that is, like, licensed by Sony for the property. We have the like, board game or whatever. Like, all of that exists. But they have not done anything with the actual game itself, releasing any new game content for the game. And it appears that this is all because FromSoft, probably specifically Miyazaki himself, who has stated multiple times, even recently, how much he basically said that it was like the perfect form of his kind of video game, and that it's like one of his favorites. It almost seems like it might be his favorite. Like, as far as we know, Sony still has like 100% like control over the IP. I guess theoretically they could have just gone over FromSoft and done this anyway. I wouldn't have wanted that, but it does seem like maybe even in the wake of like Elden Ring, they've kind of like, hey, this is someone we want more as an ally than someone we just want to like screw over for money. And so they approached them. They said, hey, would you be okay with BluePoint making a remake of one of your games? And FromSoft said no. And I think that's completely respectable, and I respect them a lot for sticking up for their artistic integrity and not wanting another studio to come in and inevitably change things. Even if it's you're trying to be as faithful as possible, there are things that will be changed. It's just the nature of it. And FromSoft saying, hey, no, we don't want this, I think is huge. I respect them a lot, as much as I want a remaster, and I think this actually bodes very well for a remaster in that, I think once FromSoft, eventually down the line, I think it will happen. I think this now means that FromSoft has a good bit of leverage to say, hey, okay, now we're ready to move forward with this. I think Sony will let them, because as we just read, they believe that the numbers made sense, that this game would do well. And I wouldn't even be surprised if, say, a remake for Bloodborne happened. It would come pretty close, if not surpassing, the original game in sales, just because of how much this genre has like bloomed in the years since. And now you're allowing, you know, more people to want to come in because of the higher resolution, higher frame rate, things like that, which are also things I think you could potentially expect from a remaster of the game. Just bringing in more people, more sales, but then those are sales you can kind of like, you know, I don't know how they count that, but even add on to the original release, because it is the original game, just, you know, better resolution, better frame rate. But yeah, the fact that Sony was the one that is like, this actually makes sense financially for us, which is something people have speculated for a while, is that, you know, maybe Bloodborne didn't sell as well as they wanted, that if the money was there, Sony would have done this forever ago. And I've always stated, it's the FromSoft side of the equation is what people keep missing. And people like to go back to the Miyazaki quotes of like, oh, you know, if, you know, we'd like to do something, but that's ultimately up to Sony. And while I think maybe there is a part of that, I think it's more so, I think people were maybe misinterpreting that a little bit, in that he's saying more that, you know, we can't just on a whim do this. Like, there would have to be more discussions, more talk about, like, what does that actually look like, rather than us at FromSoft saying, okay, today we're going to do this. And I think that's more what he meant, and not so much that Sony was the one, like, blocking them from that. And I think that's more and more evident now that this has kind of come out, and kind of like reframes what he was talking about, what he was saying here. And so yeah, it's this whole time everyone's like, oh, Sony's the one blocking us from everything. And I'm like, you know, do we want another extension of this game, of this universe, without FromSoft? Like, what is Sony going to realistically do by themselves that doesn't involve bringing in another studio, unless FromSoft somehow diverted their attention from all their multiple projects right now? The Duskbloods, this other game coming out later in the year, probably other projects they have in the works that they haven't even announced. Maybe one of those is a Bloodborne remaster, according to the original report I did earlier this week from Detective Seeds. He had mentioned that there was one of the games that was pitched by BluePoint that is now being worked on by another studio. Could that actually be the Bloodborne remaster? I don't think so. I'm guessing more it could be that, like, Jack and Daxter thing. But, I mean, we'll just have to see. Or he's talking about the God of War stuff, which I don't think was necessarily a pitch thing as far as we know, but regardless. So yeah, this is all very interesting. I kind of want to give a lot of respect to FromSoft. I've seen so many people, and this is the other end of it too. So many people. I'm constantly, like, my feed is divided right now. It is people who are saying, thank goodness they stepped in, you know, and this means that we'll, you know, maybe hopefully eventually get a remaster, but the game will be left alone. Like, it won't be touched by another studio. And then on the other side, you have people saying, oh my gosh, what a FromSoft L. How could they do this? Like, why would they step in and stop us getting peak from another studio? And I just don't understand that mindset of why would you want that, when, one, this game is from 2015. What other games are we remaking from that year? Like, nothing. Like, there's no reason to remake it. The only reason people are saying that is because of the frame rate and the resolution, which is more easily done in a remaster than in the ground up remaking it. And it's art direction is probably going to be worse in that remake, and maybe even gameplay and movement is worse in that game. Like, do we really want that, or do we just want the game that's already, like, really, really good and it just plays better? Like, I don't understand. Like, I guess people are like, oh, well, it was this or nothing. And I don't think that's the case. I just think it will come when it comes. And I do think this kind of is a big moment from the whole Bloodborne community of like, oh, we're constantly asking for things in comment sections. We now have our answer. And I'm very interested to see what the comments look like in the next Sony showcase, PlayStation showcase, because if you're like me, you look at the comments and 50% of them are Bloodborne, Bloodborne 2, Bloodborne Remake, Bloodborne Remaster. Like, it's that. So it's gonna be, this will be the first one, whenever it happens again, that we've had this information. And yeah, I'm interested to see what the community reaction in those comment sections is going to be. But just to circle back and cover everything one more time, you know, BluePoint pitched Bloodborne to Sony. Sony came back and said, It makes sense financially for us. FromSoft doesn't want this, and I really do respect FromSoft for standing their ground, and I kind of respect Sony for respecting FromSoft. Say, hey, you know, these guys, we don't want them as enemies. We want them as allies. So let's, you know, not step on any toes here. Unlike what they did with Demon Souls. Even though, you know, Miyazaki wasn't, you know, he was kind of chill with that. At least he seemed publicly chill with that. I do imagine there were people at FromSoft that were not super happy with how Sony went about that, because there was no, they did not work with FromSoft at all on that game. And I respect Sony for kind of like growing up here and being like, okay, let's not do that again. Okay, so anyway, all of this is very cool. I've been covering this. Like I said, I covered the kind of original report that was like, okay, take with a big grain of salt. A lot of this is super, like, allegedly, you know, from former employees, you know, but it's possible. And this kind of really confirms most of that. So I think that's kind of huge, and I wanted to cover this again. So if you like the video, if you like Soulsborne content, subscribe, hit the like button, go follow me over on TikTok, because I post a lot about this stuff as well, just in short form content. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, guys, and I will catch you in the next video.